It's time to work on the filler blocks on our Star-Spangled Beauty ladder quilt. The filler blocks are on page 44. All of the fabrics have been fused with interfacing on the back, and I have the batting. Let's get started on these 6 quick filler blocks. I have opened Embellishment software, and before I start working on the filler blocks, I wanted to show how I organize my project and how I use that when I'm using Embellishment software. When I purchase a new project, I make a folder with the name of that project, and then I start to organize all the files that I have purchased for that project. So within this Star-Spangled Beauty folder, I make 3 folders that I have found helps me keep organized. I have the embroidery file folder. The files that are in this folder are the files that come with the project when you purchase it, and that includes instructions. Then I make a folder for the quilting bundle if I've chosen to purchase a quilting bundle for that project. In this folder, I do simplify the names of the background quilting designs. And then the other folder that I make, I have labeled combined files. Now right now this does not have anything in it. This will have the files that I use software and either merge or make changes to any of these embroidery and quilting bundle files. I will save them in the combined files folder. I also want to note, for example, these embroidery files, I have only put the file type that my machine uses. I use the PES file type. And of course, when you purchase a file, it comes with, I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7 different file types because there's lots of different types and brands of embroidery machines. I only keep what my machine will use. And that is the same with the quilting bundle. I only keep the PES file type. Now for my USB files that I take to my machine and stitch out, I download these 3 folders, and you've seen the folders on the blocks that I've done so far. I have only used the embroidery files and the quilting files separately. From now on, I will be using the embroidery software to combine those before I even save them and take them to my machine. I'm ready to work on the filler blocks, and I have decided to try something new, so we'll see how it works. So I've looked over the designs, and I think I have figured out how I want them to be grouped. And the first thing I'm going to do is bring in all 6 of the filler blocks. So I will open my quilting bundle folder, and the first 2 blocks that I'm going to bring in are both 8 inches tall. The first is a floral 14 block by block, and I need the 4 by 8. I will drag that and drop it into the hoop, and then I will go back and I need to get the stars 11 block by block, and this needs the 2 by 8. I will drag and drop that into the hoop. They do come in centered, and I'm going to leave them like that for right now. I'm going to select both and just move those off to the side. Now the next blocks are the same design, and those are stars 12. And the first is the 2 by 6 horizontal. Again, if you have 2 blocks and 1 horizontal, 1 vertical, the horizontal H comes before V alphabetically, so that is the first. Then the second is the 4 by 6 horizontal. I will drag and drop that into the hoop, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put those off to the side. Now the last 2 are also the same design, and they are the plaid 5. And I need the 4 by 4 and the 4 by 6. So these are the 6 filler blocks, and I think I'm going to put them together in these sets. These two together, these two together, and these two together. So the first thing I'm going to work on are these 8-inch designs. So I am going to select those. I am on a Mac, so I am going to Command X to cut because I want them off of this page. And I'm going to come up to the left-hand toolbar and start a new page. And then I will Command V to paste. Now, right now I have my 7 by 12 inch hoop and I need the 9 by 14. So I am going to come up to the Preferences folder, select my 9 by 14, and then I always like to come to this compass, select H, and that just puts the whole hoop onto my screen. So now what I'm going to do is I need to rotate so that the 8-inch goes across to fit right perfect into my 9 by 14. So I'm going to come up to this top and then I can move these into the hoop, and you can see how well they fit within that 9 by 14 inch hoop. So I'm going to select the first design and move it up, and I want to space these maybe about an inch or so apart. The fabric will overlap, and that's okay. I just don't want the fabric to get stitched in to the block above it or below it. So that looks good. So right now I still have 2 designs and they have all of the steps of the background quilting. And I want to make some more changes because for me that's the point of software, is to do changes to merge and make this faster to stitch out. So Kimberbell's background quilting has 5 steps, and that is the placement for the batting, tack down of the batting, the placement of the fabric, the tack down of the fabric, and then the quilting. And then that would repeat for the second block. Now, I cut my batting to size, and so the second step, which is the tack down of the batting, has been a step that I have been skipping just right at my machine. I will just use my down arrow and move to the next step. But because I'm in software, I'm able to actually delete that. And so that is a step that I will delete. The third step, which is the placement for the fabric, is also a step that I have been skipping. And that is because it is only 1/4 of an inch. Here's our batting, and here is where the fabric placement line is. And that's only 1/4 of an inch. And Kimberbell has us cut our fabric much larger, and so to me that's a step that I don't need. I've never used it, at least in this instance for the background quilting, and so I am just going to delete both of those steps. So I will come to this right hand side, select that second step, hold my shift key down, select the third step, and hit delete. I will do the same thing for the bottom design, select the second, hold my shift key down, select the third, and delete. So now I've taken 4 steps out of our design. So now I have just the 3 steps, and I want to make one more change before I color sort and save this design. Now, if I were to color sort and merge these together, what that means is anything that's the same color will be merged into the same step. So if I were to color sort this right now, both of the placement for the battings would be merged because they are the same color. Same with the tack down of the fabric, and the same for the quilting because they are the same colors. Now that would be great if I knew what threads I was going to be stitching the background quilting in and if they were the same color. They are not going to be the same color, and so I don't want those 2 steps to run together or combine. I want the machine to stop between those 2. So in order to do that, I need to change one of these colors to a different color. It doesn't matter which one. I'm going to pick the second one. I will select that step. I will come down to this swatch, and then I can just choose any color. I'm just going to pick the bottom one, And again, of course, we know that this doesn't mean it has to be this color. It just means it's going to tell the machine to stop. So I'm going to select OK. So now the only thing that's different is the background quilting are different colors. So now I can come up to Utility and Color Sort. It's been changed by 2 colors, and I will always select a new view. So in the new view, there is one design with the 4 steps. So the placement for the batting runs at the same time. The tack down of the fabric runs at the same time. Then it will do the first background quilting. It will stop so that I can change colors, and it will do the second background quilting. And that's just what I want this block to be. So now I can save this file. I will come to File, Save Stitch File As, and I will name the block. I'm just going to call it Filler Block 1. And this is where I will start putting things into my Combined Files folder. And I will save. And then I will add that to my USB and take it to my machine. So now that I have this file saved, I can close that out. This page has the 2 where I copied and paste those original designs. And when I close this out, it will ask me if I want to save it. I don't, because I just saved it. So I will select Don't Save. Now I can start working on these 2. And these 2 will fit into my 7 by 12 inch hoop. So I am going to select, I think I'm going to start with these up here. I'm going to select these 2 designs. Again, I'm going to Command X to cut, and I'm going to start a new page, and Command V to paste. Now you'll notice, because the last hoop that I used was my 9 by 14, a new page opened with a 9 by 14. So I want to come back up to the preferences and change it back to the 7 by 12. And then I have these designs. Now I'm going to do the same thing where I come to rotate these so that they fit better in that 7 by 12 inch hoop. So I am going to select that second design and move it down. And we are going to repeat the same steps. I will separate them just by an inch or so, so that the fabric will overlap, but it won't get caught in the stitching of the next block. I have all the same 5 steps of the quilting. So I am going to select that second, hold my shift key down, select the third, and hit delete. And I will come do that for the second. And again, I'm deleting the tack down of the batting and the placement for the fabric. Now, I do also want to change the quilting color of one of the designs, because these won't be the same color. And so I'm just going to, again, select one of the quilting designs. I'll go ahead and choose the second. And I'm going to select the swatch and just pick that bottom. Select OK. So now, again, everything's the same except for the quilting have 2 different colors so that the machine will stop. So now I want to come to Utility and Color Sort. It's been changed by 2 colors or 2 stops. Again, select a new view. Now we have one design with the 4 steps. It will do the placement for the batting at the same time, the tack down of the fabric at the same time, and then it will run one quilting and then the second, and that's so that I can change the color of thread. And so this is done for these 2 blocks. I will come to File, Save Stitch File As, and I will just call these Filler Block 2. Again, it will be into my Combined Files folder, and I will hit Save. I can close this out. This was my original with the 2 designs. I can close that and not save. And then I'm back to just one set left. So I am going to keep the 7 by 12. I will select both of these, again, rotate. And the reason I'm rotating is because I will use less stabilizer because I can bump these all the way down in my hoop. Now with this design, there is a smaller 4x4, and so of course there will be more stabilizer on the side, and that's fine. And so I will move that up again about an inch apart. Now this design, because it's the two-tone, and you can see there are two colors in the background quilting, and that is something new from Kimberbell. And so this just adds a second background per design. So here would be the first color, and then it has a second color. Other than that, all of the steps are the same. So the first thing right off the bat is I'm going to select that second step, which is the tack down of the batting. Hold my shift key down, select the placement for the fabric, and I'm going to choose to delete. I will do the same thing for the second design. And that leaves us now with 4 because of the two-tone quilting. So now you'll notice that the first part of the quilting are the same colors, and then the second part are the same colors for both blocks. And again, I need to change one of these designs so that I can stop my machine and change the colors of threads. So I'll just again pick the second. I could easily just pick the first design. It doesn't matter which design you pick. I will select that first quilting, select this swatch. I will select this bottom, which I've been doing for the others, and select OK. Now I need to come back to that second design on the second color of the background quilting. Choose this swatch, and I will just pick a different color. Right now it has this color. It's this navy color, and so that's the color it is, and it's the color up here. So I need to pick not the bottom one. It needs to be something different. I'm just going to go to the next one above, the midnight navy, and select OK. So now when I color sort, the first 2 steps will be combined into one, and then it will go through 4 steps of the background quilting. So let's see if that's what's going to happen. So I will come to utility and color sort. It's been changed by 2 color changes. Again, always select a new view. Now I have 1 design, and I have 6 steps. So let's make sure that those steps are correct. So both placement for the batting will run at the same time. Both tack down of the fabric will run at the same time. And then we start the quilting on the top block, the second part of the quilting on the top block, then the first step of the quilting on the bottom, and then the second. And that's just what I want so that I can change the colors between the 2 blocks. All right, that is exactly how I want these filler blocks to be. So I've gotten 6 filler blocks down into 3 hoopings. And now with this one, I can go to File, Save Stitch File As, and I will just call this Filler Block 3. And again, it's in my Combined Files folder, and I will hit Save. Now I can close this out because I just saved it. Now this original, I can just, when I close my Embroidery software, it will ask me if I want to save, and I will not save it because I just saved it. So let's get stitching these filler blocks. So I'm back on my machine, and I put all of those combined files that I just made for the filler blocks on to my USB, and so I have it plugged back into my little cord. And so I am going to go into embroidery. I have my 9x14. I'm going to slide that on, and I will go to the USB. And now this time I'm going to choose the combined files folder. And here are the 3 that we just worked on. I am going to choose this first one that we did in the 9x14 inch hoop, and I will hit set. I need to come up to my settings and change my hoop, of course, to the 9x14. select OK. What was my speed? My speed was good. Now I'm going to select embroidery, and you can see I have, it comes in centered, so I have a lot of stabilizer up here, a lot of room down here. And so I am going to go to layout and move, and I am going to just bump it all the way down to the bottom so that now everything above this I can save for another time. So I'm going to choose OK. And again, I like to go to the minus plus needle. Now, I don't need to use this to skip those steps that I have been skipping because I took those out in software. However, I still like to be on this screen if my thread breaks and I need to move back some stitches to restart, or, whatever reason, I'm right there ready to go. All right, so the first step is going to do the placement for both the batting. So here are the placement for the battings, and you can tell that I could have probably moved this down quite a bit, but that's okay. I also just have the pink from the last block that I did. I'm just going to leave that until it's time to do the quilting. And so now I need to place the batting. I did use temporary adhesive on the back to put the batting down, and now I need to get the fabric from all of my filler block fabrics. So I know that these two are the 8-inch. They were the only two 8-inch designs, so I will be able to easily pull these designs. But I'm going to show you what I do on the next designs that have some of the same sizes. But let's finish these. I'm going to tack these down, and then we'll run the quilting. I did want to point out that the filler blocks aren't quite cut as large as, say, our background fabric, and so there's not quite as much fabric, so you have to do a little bit better at placing this, centered over the batting, but there's still plenty of room on all of the sides. So now let's do the quilting. So I want you to see that I did the color that the book called for, which was the raspberry color, and you literally can't even tell there's quilting. And it was such a cute design. It's that floral design. So when this is in the quilt, I think it's just going to look like a piece of fabric. I would probably try something different, maybe the pearl color or white, although that would probably show up a little bit better. Even though there's white, you could do pink. I just don't think you see that at all. So with that being said, this bottom piece of fabric is supposed to be the rock navy, and I kind of feel like I'm going to be in the same predicament. You're not really going to see it. So I am going to try the pearl color thread, which is that off-white thread, and let's see if that works to see the quilting a little bit better. So that's what I'm going to try. I love that so much better. If you think picturing this with dark thread, everywhere except for where it crossed, a little flower, you wouldn't be able to see. I am so glad that I chose to do the light pearl thread on this. Now, what I think I'm going to do, I think I'm going to go back to this red piece and do the pearl. Even though I have the quilting on, I'm going to start, and if for some reason it just looks horrible, I have enough fabric to cut another piece. So I'm going to try that. So in order to do that, it says, of course, I'm finished embroidering. So I'm going to select OK. And now it's at the first step. So you could, rerun this again. So I'm going to go ahead and use my down arrow and skip those first two steps and get to the quilting for the piece of red fabric and just do that background quilting with the pearl thread. And let's start this and see what happens. So this is so much better. It's still really subtle, but you can tell there's quilting. That raspberry color thread matched so well with the background. You literally couldn't tell there was any quilting on it. And so while this is subtle, you can, see the florals and leaves, and at least you can tell there's a quilting design. And again, on this one, so my recommendation would be to use a light. I use the pearl for both these instead of what the book calls for. But so let's move on. So now, because I went back, my machine thinks I'm still in the middle and it's still wanting to do, of course, this last one. But I'm done. So I am just going to push the home, and it'll ask me if I want to cancel, and I do because I'm done. And then I will start my next set. So let me get hooped up and we'll start the next set of filler blocks. So let's go to embroidery and the USB and to the combined files folder. And I'm going to pick this design on the right. I'm going to save the plaid, the two-tone, for the last. So I will select this filler block 2 and hit set. And I'm going to go up and change my hoop because now I'm in my 7x12. Now, if you've watched any of my videos, I mention this often. In my machine settings, I do not have a 7x12. So I have to choose the 8x12, select OK. And so I want to do 2 things with this block. I will choose embroidery, and I will go to layout and move. And of course, I'm going to bump it all the way down because I have my stabilizer towards the back. I have my whole strip attached. So I want to get it closer to the bottom to save. And because in my machine it's set for an 8x12, I am also going to move this design all the way to the left. And this little bit just kind of compensates for the fact that I have a thinner hoop than what my machine thinks, just so that I don't run into trouble with, hitting my hoop. Anyways, I've always just done that when I've had to choose the 8x12 in the machine, but I have a 7x12 actually stitching with. So I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to select OK and then go to this minus plus needle. And so the first step is to stitch out the placement for the batting. I have just left the pearl thread in, and we will get that stitched out. So I have the batting set for the next 2 blocks, and I want to show on the directions how to figure out which blocks are to be used, because these 2 will be easy because they're odd sizes, but I have 2 that are the exact same size. So while I could use either for the block, I do want to do it the same as the project. So if I come to this section that talks about all the filler blocks, the filler block that I am using now is the Stars 12. So here is one, the 2x6 horizontal, and then Stars 12 is the 4x6 horizontal. So the 2x6, of course, I know what fabrics I'm going to need. I'm going to need this rectangle, but the 4x6, again, I need to know which of these fabrics to use. And so if I look here, the 4x6 Stars 12 is block number 5. And for the filler blocks, it lists, here's block 1. That's the one that we just did. Here is block 2, which is this fabric. Then, here's block 3, which is the one I'm going to use. Block 3 is this Stars 12. And then let's see, 4, here's 3. 4 was the red that we did first. And then block 5, this horizontal design, Stars 12, block 5, is this fabric. So I know this is the fabric I need. So one thing I'm going to do different is looking at the thread that they want us to use for the background quilting. It's going to start with this one, and this uses kind of one of the lighter blues, which I think would be okay. This bottom floral uses one of the darker blues, but you know, I think I'm just going to use that same pearl that just stitched out on my last ones. And you can see that looking at the tack down, I think you can see it a little bit better. And so I am going to use pearl instead of the called for color. So I am just going to do both of those the same. So here is that quilting with the pearl thread, and I am glad that I chose it. You can see the stars. You can't really tell that these are little hearts when you just look at it. The design is the stars, and they kind of form these little hearts. But you can see the quilting, and you can see that they're stars. And I think this one probably would have been okay with the lighter blue, but when there's that same color, you know, it tends to get hidden. So I'm glad I chose to do this lighter color, so that I can see, because I think especially on this one, if it would have been a dark, it would have been like that red one at first where you wouldn't have seen anything. So let's go get this hooped up, because we're going to use this same hoop for the last set of filler blocks. So I'm going to unhoop this, and sometimes when I use my 7x12, this is just an off-brand that I got on Amazon, and sometimes it doesn't seem to want to hold my stabilizer. So I'll add pins just to keep it. I'll pin it right here just to keep this, you know, from moving. However, I don't have to do it all the time, so I haven't figured that out yet. So I'm going to take this out. I'm not going to cut these off because I, again, love to save stabilizer. I am going to move this down, and here's my 9x14. We'll look at that in a minute. I am going to put this block towards, this is the bottom of my hoop. Again, this is totally optional. It's not necessary. I just love to save. So I am going to leave these attached, and I will hoop this up. And so I hoop this up, and this seems pretty good. You can see how pretty stable it is. And so I'm not going to add my pins, and it might be because I have a little tiny bit of this block. Maybe it's just making it extra sturdy, but again, I don't know the reason why sometimes it doesn't seem to be as stable, but let's take this and do our last set of filler blocks. I also want to remind you that if you choose to try this with the stabilizer still attached, make sure that when you put the hoop in that nothing, you know, flips under this way, or especially with the back, that nothing has flipped under the hoop. So now I just need to come back. I'm done embroidering. I will go home, and we'll choose the last from our combined files folder, and it's this double color background plaid. I will hit set. Now I'm already in my 5x7, but again, I am going to select embroidery and then go to layout and move, and I'll just bump this down. It's not a whole bunch, but that's what I do. I'll go to this minus plus just in case I need it. So now let's do the last two filler blocks. Now I want to point out something. I totally forgot to move these designs to the left. I moved them down, and I forgot to move them to the left because I'm using my 7x12. But remember, my machine thinks I have an 8x12. And I'm not sure if you noticed, I barely made it. My foot was right along this. Luckily, you know, that's the farthest out it's going to go. but that's why I always try, and you know, I forgot why I try to move that to the left, because I could hear it, and so hopefully that didn't, you know, mess any of the alignment up as far as the block concerned. But that's the reason that I move it over. Anyways, so let's continue. So now we're ready to do the background quilting, and this is the two-tone, and I think for the most part I'm going to do the same colors they suggest. In this 4x4 design, they suggest the bubblegum, which I don't have. I've been using pink, and the raspberry. And I think I'm going to go ahead and I was going to leave this pearl color in, but I think I am going to change to the pink, and I'm not sure if that's a mistake. I'm not sure if that will blend too much, but I'm going to go ahead and use the colors that they call for on both of these. So we'll see what happens. So I was going to go with their colors. Now here's the color they suggest. It barely looks any different. This pink, you know, it just doesn't look different. So I thought, well, maybe let me pull the darker cranberry, and that is a little, you know, probably would be okay. But I think I'm going to go back to the pearl color for the next set. Again, it wouldn't be that tragic if I used one of those colors and it just looked like a regular plaid versus a two-tone. But I'm going to try the pearl. So let's run that and see what it looks like. I'm definitely glad that I changed that to pearl. I think that the look of the two-tone, I think the threads need to be different. I think two pinks together or two blues, even if they look different on the spool, for example, these threads look completely different, but I don't think they would have made that much of a difference as I've, you know, seen on a few of the other blocks that I did. I love this. You can tell it's two-tone. I love the plaid, so I'm glad I chose to do that. Now, with this last plaid, it is going to be two different. I'm going to do what the directions call for because they're two completely different. Red, and this is the raspberry and the cobalt. And so that would be the perfect way to use the two-tone plaid design. All right, so let's get that done. So I've taken this out of the hoop and I am going to trim this down, and now I still have my whole strip that I can use again. Same thing with the 9x14. This is the amount that I had left. Now I'm not sure that that will fit into my 9x14, but I can use it for, you know, a different size hoop. So I will just put that aside. And I am going to just cut these apart so that we can start cutting these to size. I love them. Here is, I'm not sure if you can see the plaid. I like the pearl again with the pink. It really shows this time that it's a double plaid, a double color. And the same with the last one that I just did with the red and the blue. You can, you know, definitely tell that it's a two-tone plaid, so I like that. So now we need to get to cut these to size. I'm going to give them a quick press to flatten them out, and we'll get them cut to size. So I have them all pressed, and now what I'm going to do is, of course, cut them to size, but I need to look to see if these have any of the quilting that goes into the seam allowance, and it does. So this one that had the stars, if you look on the back, you can see that it does travel in to the seam allowance. And so I'm not going to take the basting out. There's, again, no reason just to cut 1/8 of an inch and take the time. So I will leave that attached. We've done the two-tone plaid. We know that that goes into the seam allowance. And you can tell because here's, the batting placement. And then here is the fabric tack down, and that stitching is right between those. And so again, no matter what we do, there's going to be this muslin in the seam allowance. So I'm just going to leave that. Here's the other plaid, so we know that goes into the seam allowance. Here's the other star. Again, that goes into the seam allowance. Now these last two, you can tell, do not go into the seam allowance. So all of the background quilting is inside of this batting placement line. So normally I would take this out, the tack down, and then trim right next to it, and then use my orange pop rulers to cut this to size. However, I don't have an orange pop ruler that will cut exactly to these two sizes. So I will be able to use my orange pop ruler for one of the sides, and I'll show that in a minute. So while normally, if this, let's say, was a 4x4 or a 4x6 and it fit my pop ruler exactly, I would take that basting out. But because I'm going to have to do things a little bit different with these, I'm going to leave the basting in for all of them. And so hopefully that will maybe be a little bit more clear as we start cutting these. So I'm going to start cutting the ones that I can cut with my orange pop ruler. This little 4x4 square that has the plaid, I will cut it face up, and I am just going to center my 4.5 by 4.5 ruler, and I'm just going to make it equal around this basting. Again, sometimes it pulls in, and so I just want to line up my ruler with that basting. And if it comes in a little bit, I just want to, center it the best I can. And so that looks pretty good. So let's get this first one cut. And there is our first filler block. The next two, I can use my 4.5 by 6.5. And again, I'm just going to line up the inside with that tack down of the fabric. And there's the 4x6. And then this one is also a 4x6, so I will do the same thing. Now this one, let me get a little bit closer and show you with this one. So here is the tack down of the fabric, and so if I put my ruler right next to that, and then I'm lining it up with, the top and the bottom. If you look on this side, let me pull it over. If you look on this side, I'm not sure you can see, this is almost 1/4 of an inch, maybe not quite. It is way over here, the tack down. And so that's pretty far. So I want to center, because my tack downs are smaller than this ruler. I'm going to center, so a little bit of this tack down will be to the inside and a little bit of this tack down. So I hope that that makes sense. And again, that's why you can't always just come with a regular ruler, because if I would have used this tacked down and cut, and then came to the side and cut, I would have been almost 1/4 of an inch short. And then that wouldn't have lined up when I went to sew this to the blocks in the section that this needs to be. So again, I'm going to line up between the top and the bottom. We're pretty good. And the sides, again, I'm going to have a little bit of the basting show to the inside and a little bit on this side, but I'm going to center so that there's equal amounts instead of being, again, lined up with one side and have a whole bunch. Anyway, so it's always good to double check when you're cutting. And then there's that 4x6. Now, I don't have an orange pop ruler that is exactly the size of the next 3 blocks. So let's go over how we're going to cut those. So for this smaller one, I do know that it needs to be 6.5 inches wide. So it matches the width of this ruler, but of course not the height. So right now I'm only worried about the width. So again, I'm lining it up with the tack down of the fabric. And I'm going to, if it's, smaller, then I'll do my best to make that even, but these are pretty good. So right now, I am just going to cut these sides because they line up with the orange pop ruler as far as the width. So let me cut this extra off. So now the width is right, and I don't have an orange pop ruler that is that height. So what I will do is just use my regular ruler. So the first thing I'm going to do is measure from the basting to the basting. It needs to be 2.5. It's pretty close. So what I'm going to do is just cut along one of the basting stitch lines. And what I'm going to do is line up along the top. I know that's straight. I'm going to line up so that I know this is straight and cut that one side off. Now I will turn this, and instead of cutting just directly on that line, although we were pretty close, I am going to line up the 2.5 inch. Make sure it's centered all the way down. Putting the top so it's straight all the way down, and now I can cut. And there I have this block. So now for the last 2 blocks, I will do the same thing, just with a larger ruler. So the orange pop ruler I have is a 6.5 by 8.5. And it matches, of course, the width, but not the height of the block. So right now, I'm not concerned with that. I will just line up these, and I will cut the sides. And then while I have this ruler out, I'm going to do the same thing with this other 8 inch that gets cut to 8.5 inches wide. And then I can put that aside. And then I will do the same thing with the regular ruler. So this one is the same width. It needs to be 2.5 inches. So I'm just going to see how close I am. It's, a hair inside. That looks pretty good. So I can cut pretty much on the line. So on this first side, I'm going to line the edge of the ruler up with that basting or that tack down stitch. And I am going to line that 2 up because I just cut the edges, so I know that those are straight. And then I will cut this one side. Then I will turn it around and I will put my 2.5 inch along the cut edge that I just did with the top of the ruler along this cut edge, and make sure that I'm straight all the way down, and then cut. And then I have my 2.5 by 8.5, and I will do the same thing with this. Now this is 4.5, and I'm not sure you can see, but if I line up here, I don't know, maybe a 1/16 off down at the bottom. I'm closer, I'm almost right on. So I will just take one of these and go, just try to get right on top of it, or just a hair to the outside, not any substantial distance. But I will line up the top, or the one with the top that I cut, because I know that that's straight. And then I will cut this side. Now I flip it around, and instead of automatically going to cut right on that line, I will measure. And so this needs to be 4.5. So I need to line my 4.5. Come all the way down and make sure I am even. I should be even on the top, and then I can cut this side. And so you can see that it is a little bit in, because one of the edges pulled in a little bit more. But there we have the 6.5 by 8.5. So now all of the filler blocks are done, and we have the entire first section done. And the filler block that I need for this first section is this one. Let me double check so I can bring my book. So I'm working on this section, and yep, it's that little floral. So all of these are for section 1. Set those aside for right now, and these are the rest of my filler blocks. So I'm going to put my filler blocks back in to a packet, and I think I took off, you know, I normally when I'm done with the packet, I'll take off the label, but I know of course that those are filler blocks. So I am going to leave this and just set this in the back of all of my packets. And so when the next section that we do is this section right here, it's a pretty large section with some large blocks, I'm going to need number 2. And so then I can just come to this packet, pull this cute plaid with the white background when I'm ready to stitch section 2 together. And then the rest will stay in, and I will just use them as they come up in the quilt. So let's put section 1 together. So I found my packet that I had left the label on, so I will just transfer these to this packet and put that aside. So putting this together, let's see how we're going to sew these. So we have the Lamb That I Love, and I'm just looking at this section. Now I'm just looking at the finishing the quilt. There is actually a section on the next page that shows a little bit closer up, so you don't have to guess. So I can look at this one right here, and it tells you which to sew, you know, in which order. But I can tell, let's put these together. And then this one. Now remember, this goes to another, so I'm going to find the packet that the lace blocks went into, and I will keep that kind of next to the filler blocks to use later on in the quilt. And then this one is the last one. So you can read the directions, of course it tells you what block, but you can tell just by looking that this needs to be sewn to this, these two need to be sewn together, and then these need to be sewn together, and then the 3 sections can be sewn, and we will be done with section 1. So let's go sew those together. Now these are so small that you really don't need to pin or clip. However, sometimes I will, just so that I know, what order, what side I'm sewing on. So I will just clip a couple of clips and take these to the sewing machine. I am going to sew 1/4 of an inch, and then we can sew the sections together. One thing I did decide to do is I am going to go ahead and take out the muslin next to the batting line on this filler block that does not have quilting into the seam allowance. So the reason I didn't, of course, again do that before is because I used these tack down lines as a guide to cut, since I didn't have an orange pop ruler exactly this size. So now that I have this cut to size, I can go ahead and take out the little bit of the tack down that I have left on this block, and then I can turn it over, and I will be able to take the muslin and cut it right next to the batting line. So that basting is out, and I can fold, again, I'll fold this back and just cut it so that when I go to sew this to the blocks next to it, there will not be any of the muslin, which again is my stabilizer, in the seam allowance, and it will just help it to be less bulky. So let me finish this block and we can get this sewn together. So for sewing the sections together, I went ahead and pressed the seam how it naturally wanted to lay. This seam wanted to lay towards this block, and this seam wanted to lay towards this block. And so again, I pressed the seams open between the blocks, and then the seams that sewed these together. It's a lot of bulk when you have a lot of stuff in it. So sometimes if it just seems to be better to lay to one direction, I will do that. So here is our first section of our ladder quilt. I love it.